What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. Well, we're down to the final four in the NFL, the final two in college football. Very excited to break things down on this show as we cover all sports. But speaking of, let's take a look at the recap screen before we bring in the stars of the show. There's a lot going on here, but way more green than red, and that's exactly what we like to see. 11-6. A lot of my picks carried over from earlier in the week, including some golf picks and some NFL picks. I go 4 out of 6. Chip hits his. Mike McClure hits his. 1 out of 2 for buckets. Larry hits his. Will Brinson 2 out of 3 in the SportsLine NHL pick. That comes through as well. We'll take 11-6. Quite literally every single time. A lot of great recap screens over the last couple of weeks. Like really impressive stuff. This is among them. Let's bring in the stars of the show, which of course include all of you in the chat: Brian Smith, Kylie Reynolds, Steve, Brad, Edward. Thanks for being in here. We've got Larry Hartstein in studio. We got Mike McClure. We got Tom Casale. We've got a lot to talk about, gentlemen. But Larry, I'm going to start with you because things look immaculate at the studio there in South Florida. Let's start with your reaction to the division round. What stuck out? I mean, 4 great games, or at least most of the games were great.
Yeah, best NFL weekend of the year, hands down. And I want to congratulate the Houston Texans for becoming the first team ever to outgain your opponent by more than 100 yards, not turn the ball over, and lose a playoff game. But seriously, the main congrats has to go to Jaden Daniels. 2 games, he's taken 1 sack. He has not turned over the ball. And when the Lions came back in that game with that big Jamison Williams run, which had a chance to turn that game, it was 24-21. What does he do from midfield? Drops a dime. A 42-yard dime to De'Ami Brown over 2 defenders. It was just a beautiful throw. This kid is playing at another level. And if Jalen Hurts and Quinyon Mitchell are not 100% by next week, and it doesn't look like they will be right now, I got to lean towards the points.
Yeah, Mike, we were talking last Friday about how this Washington game was going to be way more competitive than people thought. I know on HQ you gave out Washington at plus 440 to win, and you mentioned how the teaser liability, the books aren't super worried about it because they think Washington's going to compete there. So your reaction to division weekend, I mean, Larry just said a lot there. I mean, there's a lot to react to.
Yeah, there's a lot to react to. Baltimore, being even competitive in that game despite all the turnovers, and just the Washington Commanders. We've talked about it. That team, their defense was horrible to start the year, but we're talking about a league average defense at this point with a very good offense. And they're just playing with house money at this point, which is really, really something that you have to respect going forward, because Jaden Daniels is going to leave it all out on the field. And we really haven't seen him go crazy with the legs yet, knowing that he's probably going to at some point here. So I like the Commanders. I think that we also, I didn't get the memo on the polo, but I also think we have to talk about Jalen Hurts. That knee, when he got bent backwards, it's probably not going to feel good today or tomorrow. I would expect him to be limited at best in practice. And it's one hit away from being Kenny Pickett against Jaden Daniels in that game.
Very interesting. Tom, your reaction to division weekend.
Well, Mike, I actually had another shirt on, but I spilled water all over myself, so I had to change, right? Listen, it's my sons are Eagles and Lions fans. We once in a lifetime opportunity. We just missed it. But I got to say something about Jaden Daniels. I think he's the most improved athlete in any sport I've ever seen. When he was at Arizona State, I used to bet against him because he could only throw the deep ball. I mean, the improvement from this guy from early on in his college career to now is astronomical. I didn't think I'd ever see a rookie quarterback better than Dan Marino. For those of you who are too young, I mean, Dan Marino was like a quarterback god. And listen, I thought they outcoached the Lions, to be honest with you, but some of those throws you just couldn't do anything about. I was telling my son, I was like, buddy, you can't do anything about that one. He's just playing phenomenal. And listen, I don't know if people agree, but Washington has the better quarterback in that game.
Of course.
And easily. And I think it's going to be interesting. And, I'll go to the other game real quick because I think it's interesting that a coach and players were talking about the officiating. We don't see that often. I wonder if human nature in this Bills-Chiefs game is going to keep the flag in the ref's pockets, because you don't really see a coach saying it's us against everybody. I think the Bills have a chance.
That's interesting, Mike. Before we get into we're going to start actually with Tom's pick in college football, but the psychology of that, because like there comes a point where maybe the officials start to think, hey, like whether it's true or not is actually a different question. Maybe the officials start to think, hey, maybe I keep the flag in my pocket on what looks like a roughing the passer penalty. Do you think that inures to the benefit of the Bills going into KC?
I think it does help for sure. And I think that you get to see in this last game, there have been times where there have been hits on Mahomes that have been close, but now we focused on it, right? And we've got a little clip of him essentially flopping on the sidelines. That kind of stuff, I think, is going to start to sway it the other way. But honestly, guys, where I think it's headed with that, maybe not the massive impact on this next game. I'm thinking off-season rule changes where we actually get reviewable penalties via replay assist. I think that's something that we're getting sooner than later, and I think that that's where a lot of this complaining is likely to lead to.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, as a Washington Commanders fan, I know there was that hit on the interception return, the hit from Louvu on Jared Goff, which didn't really impact the play too much, but was a penalty nonetheless. But the face mask, the phantom face mask that was called on the Commanders, I mean, in a game like that where you're the underdog and you're the away team, I mean, momentum can shift in a flash. They got a touchdown on that drive, and I thought maybe it could be game over with momentum swinging the other way, but fortunately, I was wrong about that. All right, let's get into some picks.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I agree with you. I think it could accrue to the Bills' benefit because there has been such a groundswell. I mean, I'm seeing tweets like, you can't hit Mahomes in the face, the chest, the arms, the legs, or the knees. Actually, you can't look him in the eye anymore, and that's where it's gotten to. So I think that could be a factor Sunday.
I saw some stuff. Mark Buckle says Mahomes holding up and essentially flopping was ugly. Would be great to see a flop penalty in the NFL. He says that was a disgrace. I mean, there's a lot of sentiment. It's been building up. So, I mean, I think we're kind of maybe overstating it at this point to some degree. But, I mean, we kind of see what we see. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think the most appropriate instant flop penalty would just be simply a delay a game flag. Not a personal foul yet, but just a delay a game, I think that is probably the most appropriate thing to start with.
That's very interesting. All right. I feel like that would be even hard for replay assist to judge personally, but we'll have to wait and see what they do in the offseason. All right, let's get to some picks. If you have a Super Bowl winner of the 4 teams left, and I can't believe the Commanders are one of them. I mean, that's actually like me saying it out loud is crazy. Put it in the chat. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? Odds aside, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? Tom, we've got Notre Dame, Ohio State, and we've got a prop pick coming from you.
Yeah, I like Emeka Egbuka over 57.5 yards. I think the edge, win or lose, that Ohio State has in this game is running the football. We saw Penn State rush for 200 yards against Notre Dame. And listen, Ohio State's backs, they split carry. So it's hard to find a good prop there because you never know who's going to really control the carries. But I think what that's going to do is open up some things across the middle of the field for Egbuka because Notre Dame runs man-to-man defense most of the time. And I have to believe that a safety is going to be looking at Jeremiah Smith. I mean, they're not going to leave one guy on Jeremiah Smith or don't get off the bus. So you look at the bigger games Ohio State has played this year. Egbuka has always been a big part of the offense. I think the man-to-man defense, third downs are going to present some opportunities for him to make plays in the middle of the field. So 57.5, I think he can get to 60. Give me Egbuka over that number.
All right. We're taking Egbuka over that number, 57.5. He thinks it's good. Sounds like you think it's good up to 60, Tom, like 59.5 would be in play here.
Yeah, I actually played it about a week ago at over 60 or 60 plus. It was plus money. So, okay. Even if you wanted to take a shot at 70 plus, but I like the 60 plus right around there for Egbuka.
Okay, we're going to get back to that game in a little bit. But Larry, first, we've got a pick coming from you in the beautiful studio in South Florida. So you have the floor, my friend.
All right, I'm going to the Utah Jazz. I'm going to Walker Kessler over 11.5 rebounds. This is a dream matchup against the Pelicans. They give up the most rebounds in the NBA. He didn't to opposing centers. He didn't get to face them a few days ago because the Jazz are tanking and they rested Walker Kessler for the second time in a week, but there's no John Collins. There's no Lauri Markkanen. Now he's coming off a game where he only had 8 boards, but that was a tougher matchup. If you look at his previous 5 games, averaging over 14 boards a game. And again, this is the best possible matchup you can have for rebounds as a center in the NBA. So give me Walker Kessler to get at least 12.
All right. Walker Kessler to get at least 12. I'm looking at the chat. Gipper's picks. He's got He's got a few wins over Danny Brasco, it looks like. So we like to see that. The Gippers, you're very sharp, and you're all over our Discord. So if you want to hear what Gippers has to say and all the other experts across all of these sports, make sure you get into the SportsLine Discord. Speaking of SportsLine, we got some SportsLine picks, 2 of them actually. OSU Notre Dame, we're taking the under 45.5. That's courtesy of Eric Cohen and Emery Hunt. We like the under there of 45.5. And we've got William and Mary plus 5.5. That's college basketball, of course, from Bruce Marshall. Again, William and Mary plus 5.5 and OSU Notre Dame under 45.5. Can we go around the horn here real quick? I'm not asking for official plays, but we've got an 8.5 point spread, OSU Notre Dame. Tom, if you had to give a lean one way or the other, which team are you taking with the 8.5?
Yeah, I was dying to take Notre Dame. I just worry about that they're too beat up. You lose a left tackle. Their best defensive player was obviously out against Penn State, and I thought that was a factor. I think they're going to hang around. But my worry is at some point, there's just too much Ohio State offense, especially on the run game. I was really concerned because I had Notre Dame against Penn State, and the way they ran the ball really concerns me for this matchup. I know everybody likes Jeremiah Smith and all the big weapons, but it's up front running the football with those 2, future NFL backs. I think at some point they wear them down. I'm not going to bet the game flat out. I might look for a live or a second half bet with Ohio State because I do think this is going to be a close game for 3 quarters.
Very interesting. I tend to agree with that. And by the way, speaking of Danny Brasco, I can't believe I buried the lead. He got his first diamond. Danny Diamond, that's his new name. Rashad Bateman. I got to say, not only did he hit that, but he kind of called it perfectly in terms of, I think it's up on SportsLine on Instagram. Good stuff from Danny Brasco. Jeff Stenberg's always on Danny Brasco's case, but he's giving him some props here, which you'll love to see. Mike, your thoughts on this game?
It's fascinating. Like Tom, I want to be on the Notre Dame side. I have not played it in that capacity yet. And I think the line is fascinating because what we've seen from Ohio State over the last 3 games is definitely not their baseline that we saw throughout the season. So if you want to buy in to those 3 games being a true 100% baseline of who that team really is, then the line is correct at 8.5. If you want to give a little more credit to the body of work throughout the season, then I would set the line at 7, which again is important to remember. That's a big line in a national title game of 7 points. So for me, the key to the game is certainly going to be limiting possessions, getting this game to the 4th quarter if you're Notre Dame. Like Tom, I have some worry about a potential late cover. I think that we're talking mid-3rd quarter here where we're sitting at about a 4-point game. And the question becomes, does Notre Dame get the stop or does Ohio State score the touchdown? Because Ohio State's probably not kicking the field goal to go up 7 there. It's likely going to be a situation where they either score the touchdown and ultimately cover late. But I want to be on the Notre Dame side. I'm optimistic about their start, and they've had a ton of success in the middle 8, which is really, really important, and frankly, why they're even in this game. But my only play on the game personally is the first half team total over for Notre Dame, which I gave several days ago on the network show.
All right. Love to hear that. It's funny when you mention kicking a field goal versus going for the touchdown. In the NFL, with the teams left, it's all going for touchdowns now, not kicking field goals. Larry, you got to take on this game.
Yeah, I lean towards Ohio State just because Notre Dame, they need to run the ball. And this defense is so hard to run it against, under 3 yards a carry allowed. So I think they get it done by 10.
All right, get it done by 10. All right, let's move on to some more picks. But first, don't forget about the BetMGM promotion that we've been talking about over the last week or two. And we're in leg 3, so you still have time to participate. For each round of the big game of the playoffs, you have the opportunity to answer 3 historical playoff football questions. If you answer all 3 correctly, you'll win a share of the $750,000 in bonus bets still up for grabs. We're in the 3rd entry period, so 3 questions about conference championship games. $500,000 in bonus bets is up for grabs. Here's how it works. Access the $1 million playoff football challenge promotion at betmgm.com or the BetMGM app. Answer 3 questions per round during the big game playoffs. If you answer all 3 questions correctly, you'll win a share of bonus bets for that playoff round. Oh, we got to get to some more picks, and we're going to do it right after this message from our partners. If you're watching us on YouTube, you just caught a Farmers Insurance Open ad, which starts on Wednesday, by the way. So, and that's because they want to avoid going against the conference championships. Good for golf, good for PGA, and I guess CBS is kind of running that show. So just know that golf starts on Wednesday, goes through Saturday, and so football will have its own sort of place on Sunday. I do need to mention, I touted Danny Brasco in his what was it, 16-1, I think, or maybe it was 14-1 on Rashad Bateman. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm in the SportsLine Discord as well, but I kind of got my Twitter outrights out late. I think it was Wednesday afternoon. Well, Sepp Straka was one of them. So 50-1, we cashed that. The 4 round matchups I had, we cashed all of those, which of course were given out on the early edge. And we even had a lowest round 2 score from Sepp Straka that we also cashed. We had to split that, however. I say all that to tell you, actually don't have a pick today. One of the rare occasions where I don't have a pick, but I'll be coming with Farmers Insurance picks probably tomorrow. And of course, picks in the NFL as well. So stay tuned for that. But Mike, it's time to go to you. We go back to the Australian Open.
Back to the Australian Open. Just a great matchup to watch. It's Djokovic and Alcaraz, and hopefully the match in front of it is a little long, and this thing won't actually start until maybe 6 a.m. Eastern, which would be fantastic. We can watch it with a little coffee tomorrow morning. I took the over here. I went over 39.5 games. You're essentially betting, does Djokovic get a set in this one? If he does, I'm liking the over here. You can find it at 38.5 and a little juice as well. When I look at this particular matchup, though, the one surface that we haven't seen Alcaraz really dominate Djokovic on yet has been the hard court, playing a little slower than expected in Australia right now as well. So when I look at this spot for Djokovic, while it's very unlikely that he is even to win this match, but certainly to go on and win this event, when you look at the draw that he has, he obviously is chasing the legacy, looking for a 25th Grand Slam win. And Alcaraz, I think, is getting a little too cute at times in these particular matchups. So I think that Djokovic can rely on his experience here. Again, we don't see him as an underdog often. He is an underdog for a reason, but I like this match going to a 4th set, which would very likely get us over this total here of 38.5, 39.5. I expect one of those classic matchups here. Not going to say we get a full-on 5th set, but I think Djokovic can do just enough here, and I don't think Alcaraz is going to be desperate to leave it all out there in the first set and make mistakes. So I like this one over 39.5 for Alcaraz and Djokovic.
All right. Love to hear it. We got another Australian Open pick, which again, I'm recalling the recap screen. The one you gave out, was it Friday? That one hit, Mike?
Yes, we have not lost a tennis pick at the Australian Open yet.
There I go. So, there I go, jinxing it by
probably
asking
just
the
jinxed
question.
That one, but we'll see.
Many are asking why I'm wearing Eagles green with my Commanders going up against the Eagles. This is a classic, very subtle, subconscious for the world reverse jinx by bearing the colors of the Eagles. I'm somehow channeling them to lose in a reverse jinx fashion. Speaking of winners and losers, let's one more question on the Eagles green, bro. Yeah, Mr. Big. I think Mr. Big's actually a Washington fan, so trust me, I know what I'm doing. Tom, you're kind of wearing Washington colors, but I do want to go back to Notre Dame OSU real quick, because the one thing the NFL division round reminded me of is, like, I don't know that the better team won in necessarily any of these games. I think Washington outplayed Detroit. So, but whether they're the better team or not, I'm not sure. I think Houston outplayed Kansas City. I think you can make the argument they deserve to win, especially when you look at the stat sheet. I thought the Rams were as good as the Eagles. I mean, I thought all of these games had, like the Bills, to me, were not the better team, right? There was just a lot of turnovers. So going back to Notre Dame OSU, to me, and Mark Buchholz is kind of reminding me this, he says Notre Dame needs to force OSU to play their game, get 1 to 2 turnovers and short fields. Is that the path for Notre Dame? I mean, it sounds like, we know turnovers are volatile, but Tom, it sounds to me like the way Notre Dame wins is how these other NFL teams won this weekend, or at least a lot of them forced some turnovers.
Yeah, and listen, it's unlikely what happened in the NFL. First time since 2007 that all 4 underdogs covered, only the 3rd time since the merger. Usually the divisional round is a favorite round because some of these teams are just better, right? But for the underdog, listen, I call what Notre Dame is doing, I call the Iowa offense. You need a block punt. You need an interception return for a touchdown. They're winning in those kinds of Iowa-like ways. Because there's I don't think too many people at the beginning of the year would argue that Ohio State was the most talented team in the country. And so the most talented team in the country is in the championship game. So to beat that team, 1 or 2 things has to happen. you need those Notre Dame things to come through. You got to get a fumble. You got to get an interception to stop drives. Or Michigan Ryan Day walks through the door. That we didn't talk about it much, but I don't think he's going to coach that tight way like he has against Michigan. But if he does, then Notre Dame has a shot to pull the upset.
Yeah, I mean, I have a future on Notre Dame to win it all, so I'm certainly hoping we like, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'm hoping they get a turnover or two, because I do think that, unfortunately, it may be the only path. Mike, anything to add on there before we get to the recap screen?
Just the comment you pulled up as well. I think we all kind of understand the situation, right? And what I mean by that is Ohio State can absolutely blow Notre Dame out, win by 3 touchdowns. Notre Dame's not winning this game by 3 touchdowns. Notre Dame is winning this game in an ugly game, 20-17 style. That is the outcome that they win this game. So, yeah, I think that if you like the Ohio State, I have no issues laddering it, because I think that it absolutely could be one of those situations. If Riley Leonard throws a pick or just any sort of turnover variance the other way, I think it gets ugly quickly.
Yeah, certainly. It's same with the Commanders Lions, right? I mean, we thought the Commanders could hang with them, but if anybody's going to blow anybody out, it's going to be the Lions blowing out the Commanders. Ended up kind of being the other way around, but that, again, was a result of a lot of turnovers, which, again, Notre Dame probably needs. All right, let's turn this show over. Let's get to the recap screen and see what our picks are. We had a couple of SportsLine picks: OSU Notre Dame under 45.5, and William and Mary plus 5.5 in college basketball. Mike McClure, Djokovic, Alcaraz over 39.5 games at -110. Chip Patterson, this is a carryover from Friday, folks. The 23.5s, I think, are still out there, some 22.5s, but we just want to remind you that Friday's show, Chip Patterson did have OSU Notre Dame first half under 23.5. Larry Hartstein, we go to the NBA, the Utah Jazz, Walker Kessler over 11.5 rebounds at -120, and Tom Casale, Egbuka over 57.5 yards at -129. Believe he'd play that up to 59.5. What a great show. We broke down a lot of the division round. Looking ahead to the AFC and NFC championship, we're going to be doing that all week. We talked OSU, Notre Dame, some college basketball. We try to cover it all every single day on the Early Edge. On behalf of Larry Hartstein, Mike McClure, Tom Casale, Ben on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. This has been the Early Edge. Everybody, let's have a great Monday. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy all the sports. We'll see you soon. We rest our case.